The death of private digital dollars. The United States Treasury officially designated stablecoins as critical financial infrastructure this morning, effectively ending the era of private tokens operating outside the federal perimeter. Under the newly enacted Genius Act, stablecoin issuers are no longer just tech companies. They are legally equivalent to national clearinghouses like the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation. This shift from asset to infrastructure means the government can now seize, freeze, or direct the flow of these tokens under the same emergency powers used for bank runs. The metabolic consequences for global liquidity are immediate and strange. The Infrastructure Moat Reclassification. For years, the debate was whether stablecoins were securities or commodities, but the Genius Act sidesteps that entirely by labeling them regulated financial infrastructure. Think of it like the difference between owning a car and owning the highway itself. By defining the ledger as the highway, the Federal Reserve now dictates who can drive on it and what the speed limits are. This creates a massive compliance moat that only the most transparent issuers can cross. Tether now faces an existential choice as the law mandates all dollar-pegged tokens used by U.S. entities must be backed by assets held in domestic custodial accounts. The struggle for offshore dominance is now a struggle for survival against the Treasury's reach. The Circle versus Tether survival gap. The gap between Circle and Tether has turned into a canyon. Circle has spent years auditioning for this moment, positioning USDC as the compliant, domestic alternative that fits perfectly into the Genius Act framework. Meanwhile, Tether remains the offshore giant, relying on a Eurodollar-style shadow system that the new law explicitly targets. The Treasury's latest report shows that over 40% of offshore stablecoin liquidity has migrated to regulated U.S. rails in the last 30 days alone. If Tether cannot secure a primary dealer relationship within the U.S. by the end of the fiscal year, they risk being blacklisted from the entire American banking system. This is no longer about who has the most cash, but how that cash is audited by the state. The Trojan horse CBDC. Critics argue that this infrastructure play is a Trojan horse for a central bank digital currency. By forcing private issuers to follow these rigid rules, the government effectively turns USDC and its peers into a private label CBDC without needing a new act of Congress. However, the industry trade-off is clear: total regulatory clarity in exchange for total surveillance. On-chain data shows that since the Genius Act took effect, the number of wallet addresses blacklisted by issuers has surged by 300%. We are seeing the death of the permissionless dollar in real time, and the consequences for privacy are permanent, the part no one wants to say. The Genius Act represents the final capture of the dollar-pegged ecosystem by the legacy financial state. By reclassifying these tokens as infrastructure, the U.S. has successfully exported its monetary policy directly into the heart of decentralized finance. We have moved past the phase of stablecoins being a speculative tool and into a phase where they are the primary plumbing for global trade. For investors and builders, this means the premium for compliant tokens will only grow, while offshore, non-compliant assets will likely face a liquidity discount. The real implication of the Circle versus Tether divide is that the U.S. government has decided stablecoins are too important to fail, which paradoxically makes them the safest, yet most controlled assets in history. This effectively kills the original dream of a neutral, stateless currency in favor of a hyper-regulated digital empire. Watch for the first major seizure of an offshore reserve account as the signal that the era of the Wild West is officially over. Subscribe for more.